Hey YouTube, Joeboy here. So, the official translation of One Piece chapter 1008 is out. You guys know how we do the video. Talk about the official translation compared to the fan translation, note any difference, talk about literally anything at all. And then round out the video with comments from you guys. So yeah, this chapter is super easy. There is no difference in translation, nothing really significant to talk about other than some of the power lines from the fan translation I liked a lot more than the official. But, you know, same thing, different wording. But yeah, there actually is something that I do want to talk about the chapter that I don't think I talked enough about in my initial review. And of course, a lot of you won't like this because, you know, it's pretty much a meme at this point. It's like, what is JB going to talk about? I mean, you could probably list about 10 things, and over the past year, I've probably talked about those in every single video. But I found Luffy and Zoro's conversation in the last chapter interesting, potentially important. So we start off with this line that I assume is from Zoro, but might be from Zoro, Kid, and Law altogether. How are we supposed to beat them? It doesn't feel like our attacks are doing anything. And then Luffy chimes in almost to contradict them all. They're working. There's no way all of these hits could have no effect. They're just as human as we are. Luffy then goes into attack, gets repelled pretty quickly, and Zoro says, "Think before you leap." Killer says, "I'm amazed he can still call them the same species as us." And then Luffy says, again, this is important I think, "What, so you're just here expecting us to lose?" And Zoro says, "No, we're thinking of how to win." And then they decide their best course of action is to find a way to separate the Yonko. So this conversation conveys a few things to me about the characters involved on the roof. Oda's pretty much putting Luffy up on a pedestal in regards to pure faith. Everybody here but Luffy is seemingly doubting that they're doing anything to either Big Mom or Kaido. The only one who seems to have any confidence here is Luffy. And I also like the way that he phrased it. It was in almost like an uncertain confidence, like I can't see the damage that we are doing, but of course they're being damaged. There's no way our punches could be doing nothing, they're just human. It's a kind of simple logic, like to Luffy it doesn't matter what my eyes see because there's things that I believe that must be true. This also is potentially a pathway for Luffy to be very wrong, if Oda wills it. Obviously the normal beats of the story is that, you know, Luffy is the main character, and, you know, when Luffy says something like this, we're supposed to believe him, and this is a great moment for Luffy, basically put himself above everybody else. You all don't have enough faith. This is a big reason why we love Luffy. But at the same time, there's precedent for Luffy being in denial, which is an interesting thing to say, I think, just because that was partly a theme of the chapter for Kinemon. Kinemon was in denial that Odin was dead, that this wasn't Odin. But you know, the instance that I'm most reminded of was Luffy's fight against Aokiji. It wasn't very long, but essentially a lot of the story was sort of cultivated, written to make us believe that Luffy had some sort of giga-brain moment in which he knew that if he challenged Aokiji to a one-on-one fight, that Aokiji would spare the rest of his crew. But Aokiji says after the fight, after he defeated Luffy, you know, did you do that, or did you really think that you could beat me? And I think the honest answer is, and sort of implied by the scene, is Luffy wasn't thinking about anything other than, I'm gonna defeat this opponent. He believed that he could, but obviously he couldn't. He was in denial. But this is just how Luffy thinks. This is how his brain is wired, and ultimately why he's going to be the king of the pirates. At all times, pretty much, he chooses to believe that he will win, and things will work out for the best. But the point that I want to make here is that the Aokiji scene, I think, proves that Luffy can be wrong. He can believe in himself too much. Ask yourself, how many times in the story has Zoro essentially stated that he didn't think that they had much of a chance to win? I know that's not exactly what he said in this chapter, but he essentially said, I don't think that we're doing damage to either of them. That may have been the truth. One of the times in which Zoro has this type of energy is again against Aokiji. He says, cut it out, this isn't the time or place. This is a crucial time for the crew. Whether he did it on a whim or not, just be prepared for the worst. Do you guys see the parallels here and why the conversation is interesting? Zoro in many respects is similar to Luffy. He's a lot of confidence in himself and he displays that on a number of occasions. But there's a few key instances in the story where you can see how Luffy stands above him, whereas Zoro seems more of the realist than Luffy. And this sort of leads us into the next part of the conversation. Because of Luffy's faith in himself, he's not really all that concerned about devising ways in order to defeat Kaido and Big Mom in a way that makes sense to anybody else. Without the other people being present here, Luffy's plan would have been to continue to punch Kaido and Big Mom for as long as he is capable of doing that until he either wins or he loses. Meanwhile, everybody else has already switched gears of like, okay, we're not going to win this way, how can we win? This is a small moment of contention within the chapter where Luffy straight up questions whether or not Zoro believes that they are going to win. This seems like a continued conversation about Luffy's leadership. Zoro not so subtly here is being skeptical of Luffy's decision-making ability. Zoro's realism here is at odds with Luffy's optimism and faith. And at the very end of the chapter, I feel as though Oda sort of put his foot down as to why Luffy feels this way. Kid says with the two of them standing side by side, it just looks like we're in hell. And then Luffy says, that suits me fine. I've been to hell and back a few times already. It's home territory. Basically, there is no situation that you can put me in which I won't believe that we are going to win. At the same time, the energy from Zoro in the chapter is prepare for the worst. I haven't given up yet, but I don't like our chances. But anyway, the more that I look into this conversation, the more that I like it for how it characterizes both Luffy and Zoro. I think that the conversation overall is a little bit more special than a lot of people are giving it credit for. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into the comments. Joy Boy this chapter, Inuarashi death flags are real. Oda a few chapters later, Luffy, Kaido, and the others break the roof. Moonlight shines on Inuarashi. I mean, I just suppose it depends on how you want to take it. I mean, you could say the same thing about Jack. Inuarashi says that Jack doesn't have poison weapons, but does he? The Beast Pirates have already proven that they don't care what happens to the vast majority of the subordinates there. But you know, here you've probably caught me playing devil's advocate. I don't think that that's going to happen. That didn't feel right to me. But I guess more so my feeling is that even if Inuarashi went Sulong, I'm not certain that that's a good thing for his survival. Keep in mind, guys, that when Sulong was first introduced, the caveat that Oda placed on it is that the power was dangerous. We've now gone through the majority of the battle. We've seen the Minks. The Minks have basically fought everybody that we presume that they will. They're down for the count. All that's left is Inuarashi, Nekomamushi, maybe Carrot and Wanda later. And so far, the downsides of Sulong has not been emphasized in the story at all. I think that that's likely to change at some point in time. Next comment, having the scabbards go out one by one has something from old school samurai movies where the samurai sacrifice themselves one by one to hold off a great army. You know, after this chapter, I got a ton of comments about the Seven Samurai and how much this chapter reminds them of, old school samurai movies. If you guys don't know, The Seven Samurai was a very, very famous, considered one of the greatest films of all time from the 1950s. Had the biggest budget at the time as well. But the premise of that show, or that movie, was that you had 7 ronin, or 7 masterless samurai who were protecting a village from bandits. So it's pretty easy to see how Oda could have been inspired. In fact, many, many, many films have been inspired by the Seven Samurai, but I think in the case of Wano and Oda, this inspiration could be even more direct. But the conclusion of the movie, its resolution I guess, is that the samurai won a Pyrrhic victory. In the end, we lost the battle too. The victory belongs to the peasants, not to us. Because 4 of the 7 samurai had died. This was kind of the central theme of the entire movie. To the farmers whose crops were pillaged, houses burned, womenfolk raped or abducted, the distinction between samurai warriors and bandit tropes became meaningless. To maybe put this in One Piece terms, to the Kurozumi family and to Orochi, the distinction between samurai warriors, the people of Wano, bandits, and pirates is meaningless. Which is how Kaido got here. The main character was a farmer's son who wanted to become a samurai, so he could see both sides. Yes, it's true he rages the farmers are cowardly, mean, treacherous, quite capable of robbing and killing a wounded samurai, but it's the samurai with their looting and brutality who have made the farmers that way. In the case of One Piece, where I can see this crossing over is how the people of Wano have created Orochi. And in some respects, there's a lot of similarities to the main character of the Seven Samurai and Kinemon. Kinemon, in fact, was a bandit before becoming a samurai, and certainly wasn't of the noble class. The main character of the Seven Samurai was also considered a hack. He wasn't a real samurai. And I feel like sort of the direction of Kinemon's stories is heading in a similar direction. Not that Kinemon isn't an able swordsman in reality, but to some he may not, be seen in that way. The whole story of the main character in the Seven Samurai was to prove himself. And I think that Kinemon's story is heading in that direction. But again, to get back to the point of this comment, the overall story beat of the Seven Samurai, the conclusion was a Pyrrhic victory. So to apply that into One Piece terms, essentially the Straw Hats and the samurai, they win, but they also lose. And that seems like a realistic ending to me. So to see this foreshadowing or this setup of the samurai falling one by one, it makes a lot of sense. Next comment, Orochi wanting to burn Kaido because he can't escape in a flying island was very weird for me. Yeah, several comments pointed this out. It's like, you're trying to kill everybody, but don't you remember Kaido can fly? Orochi's never been the smartest. And when you actually sit down and you think about it, it's like burning Onigashima couldn't be any more pointless because the Beast Pirates have already made it very clear that they don't care about the vast majority of their subordinates. Any of their subordinates that they would actually care about would probably survive the fire. Orochi obviously doesn't know that, but we know that. Maybe a little bit of dramatic irony. But yeah, despite the fact that it seems pretty clear to us as the readers that setting Onigashima on fire shouldn't be all that significant, it's probably going to be. And the way that it is, I'm really interested to find out. Next comment. I took it as Momo having similar observation hockey to the Shandian girl from the Skypiea arc. He can sense and feel everyone, which makes him uneasy, like in Zoe. This was probably the most common comment that I got in the video. This seems to be the prevalent opinion, and another character that you can throw in this boat, if you don't remember the Shandian girl from Skypiea, which I don't blame you for, is Kobe's reaction in Marineford, where all of a sudden his observation hockey exploded, and he could just feel everyone's pain. Perhaps there's some similarity here with whatever power Momo demonstrated to know the events taking place on the roof. To be quite honest with you, this is probably the answer of best fit, the simplest answer. Why does Momo know what's taking place on the roof? Well, observation hockey. And it's for that reason why I think that it's kind of less interesting. The only thing that really turns me off to this speculation, to this theory, is that the whole scene was about Momonosuke, his artificial fruit, his dragon form, and then at the end it's like, oh, and Momonosuke also has, unrelated to this whatsoever, high tier observation hockey naturally, that he pretty much takes for granted because it's clear that he's always had. Personally, if this is the direction that it goes, you've taken something potentially cool and made it as least interesting as it could possibly be. I mean, you guys know sometimes my imagination goes crazy, but then, I start piecing things together like, oh, maybe the girl from Skypiea and Kobe and Momonosuke all have something related. Maybe this power is a power Momonosuke only has in his dragon form. Maybe Kobe and therefore the girl from Skypiea have more interesting connection going on. That's why their observation seems to be on another level. But it may just be wishful thinking. As people often remind me, the simplest answer is usually the right answer. But it doesn't have to be. Next comment, it almost seems like Momo's power might have been ruled a failure because of its connections to his emotions, and how they trigger his power as opposed to using it on a whim. It seems the more we find out about his story, the more we find out that one of his biggest obstacles is his feelings of helplessness and the massive pressure put on him. It would be so Oda to have Momonosuke finally learn to control this form at will by being unashamed during Wano's finale. Well, I don't think that they knew that this was the failure of the artificial fruit because nobody ever ate it. How could you know that this was the weakness when you never even tried? That being said, it's clear that Oda has put some sort of emotional constraints on Momonosuke's ability to use the fruit, so to be able to use it fully by sort of mastering yourself and becoming what you want to be, having confidence in yourself makes a lot of sense. Another way I've seen this taken is that the reason why Momonosuke becomes a little eel rather than a full, an actual dragon, is also related to his emotions. I really hope that this becomes something. I still think that Momo's dragon form holds the key to a lot of what's going to happen later. Next comment, you should check out Sawyer 7 Mage's theory about how Momonosuke is seeing, sensing Luffy right now. A short version is that it's similar to what you said about the voice of all things, but he went more in depth and was explaining how Zunisha could actually be nearby. And since Zunisha is so damn colossal, Zunisha could still be looking down at the floating island, or at least be eye contact level with it. And Momonosuke is able to see through Zunisha's eye, just like he did back in Zou. Zunisha could also put out Orochi's fire. Man, Zunisha showing up to Wano was a theory that we talked about a long time ago that I had totally forgotten. But essentially my take from way the hell long ago is that I think that Momonosuke might call Zunisha because of his power similar to Poseidon's. Also, I think that Zunisha is going to die. It sort of goes in lines with my thought that all the various non-human groups in the world of One Piece are separated and isolated, like the fishmen underneath the ocean, the minks up on Zou, the Tantata in Greenbit, and so the story's going to work itself in such a way to bring all these groups of people together, even destroying their homes if need be. Zunisha, being the home of the minks, would need to die for the minks to be forced to live with the humans, and for that conflict to resolve itself in some way. Basically, there's no hiding anymore. Zunisha appearing could also give Oda the opportunity to explain the mystery that he introduced in Zou in a very direct, relevant way, which I like. That being said, I don't think that I'm a huge fan of this theory right now. I'm not even certain if the Flower Capital is even over the sea anymore. But man, would this be epic if it was true. But to take this idea and sort of incorporate it with the next comment, I see Momonosuke holding up Onigashima from falling onto the Flower Capital, being a parallel of Odin holding the scabbards, just more greater and living up to his name, Peerless. Well, if that doesn't make your willies wet, I don't know what will. This also is a pretty good opening to make the same speculation about Yamato. We obviously don't know what Yamato can transform into, but Yamato claims to be Odin, so, an Odin feat for Yamato makes some sense. Next comment, Joy Boy, Momo won't be tricked by Kanjuro's clones because Voice of All Things will tell him it's not the actual person. This is a really just solid theory because, Momonosuke knows that Luffy's on the roof and how Luffy is feeling generally, so it's fair to wonder that if Kanjuro came at Momonosuke with a clone trying to beat someone else, would Momo spot the fake? I think he might. Next comment, I'm convinced that Bao Huang's got something going on there. In chapter 1006, when she finds that Momo, Shinobu, Yamato trio, she says on the speakers that Momo fled with Yamato and a Kunoichi, and then in the next panel she pinpoints his location on Yamato's back side, knowing its very exact position. Then she speaks again and says she is ... with the Kunoichi, giving everybody wrong information about Momo's very exact location. And then on this chapter, when Denjiro points out that Kanjuro is going after Momo, Kawamatsu recalls the words spoken before. It's with the Kunoichi. And then we got to see the mouse thing with the eye paper and 3 dots again. Don't know about you all, but I think something is missing, but I can't tell what it is. I've got nothing to add to this other than if there's something here, you deserve a big clap. This is almost like parsing words a little bit too much, but at the same time, would Oda or could Oda? Yeah, he could. I'm still not entirely convinced Bao Huang's on Kaido's side, so, I don't really know anything, but it's just a gut feeling that's sort of sitting there like, I don't know. But yeah, basically what's being said here is that, based on what Bao Huang said to everybody, if the Kunoichi, Shinobu, and Yamato split up, everyone would assume that Momonosuke was with the Kunoichi and not with Yamato, despite Momo literally being attached to Yamato. So if this particular situation happened, this could become significant. And finally, we have the last comment. Joy Boy always trying to bring up Harry Potter. First with Big Mom and her devil fruit, second now with Kaido. Now I predict a Joy Boy theory about Harry Potter and Blackbeard. Multiple souls in one body. I almost don't have to say it. But yeah, you guys should know by now, man. I was a huge, or I don't know. Harry Potter's over, but growing up, I was as big a fan as there was. I read or listened to every single one of those books, probably 18 times each. You think that I'm exaggerating, but I am not. I've always been really repetitive. Rather than read something new, I'll read something familiar. Or watch something new, I'll watch something familiar for the nth time. But yeah, I pretty much grew up with Harry Potter. That was the first major book series that made me like reading, which is a common story for a lot of people of my generation. But yeah, expect more mentions, I guess. I tell people this from time to time, but the first ever theory that Joy Boy Theories ever made was when he was 9 or 10 years old on a ancient forum called The Leaky Cauldron. So you can't say that puberty made me weird tinfoil conspirator, I was just born that way. But real talk, now that I'm older, I see flaws in Harry Potter that I didn't notice at all when I was younger, but there's still some elements of Harry Potter that just simply cannot be matched. There's like a level of absurdism to the Harry Potter world, which is hard to recreate, and something that I think is similar in One Piece, and maybe a reason why I like both so much. And I can safely say that I have never felt closer to a cast of characters than I did to the characters in Harry Potter. But yeah, that's why I like that, that's why I mentioned that, now you know. But anyway, that's pretty much all I had to say today. As always, I'm curious as to what you guys think. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Like the video if you liked the video, dislike the video if you disliked the video, subscribe if you want to be notified for my future content, and as always guys, have a wonderful day.